All success is successful adaptation. That's just logically the case. A rock only continues to exist because it's sufficiently well adapted to its environment to meet the conditions for continued existence, but also including things like your happiness. Your happiness is something that can only endure and can only continue to exist if something meets the conditions for your continued happiness.
To succeed and thrive at C-suite level, you need strategic clarity and operational excellence. Hello and welcome to the C-Suite Framework podcast. And I am excited for the first time to bring back a guest. So I guess we could say this is my favorite guest because it's the only person who I've ever brought back a second time. Dr. Max McKeown is going to be joining us shortly to talk about his latest book. And this one is a belter. It is very different, I think, from what's come before. If you're familiar with Max McKeown's strategy work, it builds on it. It talks about adaptation, but it dives really, really deeply into how we can understand our world better, understand when we're stuck in a pattern, what it could take to break out of that pattern, and how to identify the next necessary action. It is quite profound stuff, but Max always makes it super lively, and I love my conversations with him. So that one's coming up. Just a reminder to check out the online courses and books, all available at www.csuiteframework.com. I hope all is well with you. Let's cross over to Max. I'm delighted to welcome back to the podcast my first repeat guest, Dr. Max McKeown. Max is born in London and he is an English writer, consultant and researcher specialising in innovation strategy, leadership and culture. He has written 7 influential books and conducts research with Warwick Business School. He's a fellow of the RSA, served on the advisory board for the Rollins Centre for E-Business, earned his MBA and PhD from Warwick Business School. He is a speaker, innovator and author of The Strategy Book and many others, and now creator of the new book, Super-Adaptability, How to Transcend in an Age of Overwhelm. Max, welcome back.
It's so good to be here.
I'm afraid for the listeners, this is a visual cue, but for anyone looking at the video, this is quite a oeuvre. Is that the word? Quite a tome. This has an element of like life's work about this one. Talk to us about it.
If I was being semi-pretentious, I'd say objet d'esprit. It is a book that has ended up large. It has 11 interconnected chapters. Each page connects to each last page, so each idea genuinely builds. This is not a book that can just be reduced to the blog post version, and yet it does have something core in it that you will recognize. So it's illustrated, it's my art, because of course you know that I present live. We'll get into the reasons, but it truly is a beautiful thing. So I looked back over my notes, obviously, in preparing for this, and I had written down something that you said to me in the last interview. You said, all success is successful adaptation. And I really felt you took that when talking about strategy and have just exploded it into something else. So was that the genesis for the book? And talk to us about how it came about. Absolutely. So all success is successful adaptation. That's just logically the case. It's the case for a rock. A rock only continues to exist because it's sufficiently well adapted to its environment to meet the conditions for continued existence. And that might seem quite deep, but that's true for any organization, any organism, including you, but also including things like your happiness. Your happiness is something that can only endure and can only continue to exist if something meets the conditions for your continued happiness. And so it is for every possible measure of success, wherever you put that success. So all success is successful adaptation. And in all my work over the many years with clients and also as a human and a parent and as a person, I saw this truth unfold and kept testing it. I like testing everything that I say against reality and then back to what I say and then back to reality. How can you really get out of this fact? And if that is the case, and since we are an animal capable of conscious adaptation, how could we better consciously adapt? And what's the best model of that conscious adaptation? Because unlike the rock, we have choices. The rockers continue to exist, but it doesn't have to do anything special to do so. It either meets those conditions or it doesn't. We're very different. We can change what we do, and that's what fascinates me about humans.
I loved you said somewhere, this is a book to enable you to think better. There is an element of kind of seeing the matrix in this. I thought of that a number of times when you were there, that I think what you're trying to teach us in there is to like spot the loop, identify it, see it. And then, of course, you have this three parts that kind of keeps on webbing out into further threes, but to recognize, to understand, and to take an action. So walk us through the RUN model and what it means.
One of the initial things to say is something that you spotted, and I'm so glad you did, not only because I say so in the book and illustrate it with actual loops, but because it's innately human. So the book is shaped to be what it teaches and to teach what I want you to understand, to help you or anybody to become and to gain the benefits that I'm describing. So, for instance, years ago, your listeners won't necessarily know, but I bothered to go and get an MSc in psychology as well to make sure that I really understood my stuff. There's a thing called Miller's Law that suggested that we could remember in working memory, keep in memory 5 to 7 things. And in recent times, it's been shown that really we can only keep 2 to 4 things in mind, particularly when we're stressed or we're dealing with more complex things. And right in the middle of that, of course, is 3. And almost everybody can remember 3 things, which is why we're so drawn to 3s, trios and triptychs. It even has religious significance across all sorts of different religions. So right in the middle of that, I thought I needed something that could explain how humans consciously adapt, that can be remembered by all humans, and then help them to better consciously adapt. And thus came this idea of the minimum viable loop. 3 steps: to recognize what is happening, to do a certain kind of recognition, what is happening that will help me to better adapt or that threatens me, a particular kind of recognition. And then the second step, to understand, and at a deeper level, to understand why this thing is happening, the part of the world that you need to better understand to lead to the next step, which is necessary action. So that the 3 simple steps would be recognize, understand, necessary action, RUN, a run loop. And thus I argued throughout, you're either being run by the loops or you are running your own loop. Which one is it? Has it become conscious or not? And this is easy enough to remember, but then can go deeper and deeper and deeper. It's a primitive, it's simple, but you can go as deep as you like and then come back up to only having to remember 3 things, which I teach people to do just with a click, a simple click to remember, understand the simple loop, recognize, understand, necessary action.
And it's so foundational. I mean, this is not a strategy book. This is a book about thinking. And this is a book about recognizing that everything going on around us, from this podcast that we're having right now to why someone is like, why do I never get promoted? Or why do I keep on having this same argument with someone? There is a loop playing out over and over again. The first thing you need to do is go, oh, wait, hang on. Click at the finger. This is a loop. What is it? What's it made of? How can it be influenced? What would be the right thing to influence it for the better for me? And then what's the necessary action that I take? Like, have you found yourself thinking differently now that you've created this and recognized it? Do you apply this all the time?
I do increasingly. It's quite a pressure when you discover something that's useful to other humans because you feel like you should be able to solve everything, which of course I can't do. But what I have noticed, and really this has been decades in its gestation, I've been noticing patterns and then trying to explain them and then going back to the patterns. I'm a scientist and that's how science works. You notice things, then you understand them, then you take some necessary action. Science is really a run loop in action anyway. And yes, absolutely, because it can, I'm about to do this podcast with you, maybe I'm feeling a little overwhelmed, there's too much going on. I think, okay, recognize what's happening, you've overwhelmed yourself, understand how that's occurring, take some necessary action, breathe. This is a friend. You're going to spend a lovely 30 minutes with somebody that you like. That's the simple version. What if there's a much bigger version? And there could be, as you say, it could be relationship. It could be something that's part of your whole life. Somebody is ill that you know, somebody's dying that you know. There's huge events in the world. And if your response to that is leading to a bad place or a place you're not happy with, that's the time to, in the book terms, reboot the loop. And then you can learn those 3 steps so easily. And they stick with people. I've been incredibly pleased but surprised at how quickly people start talking back in those terms. It's simple, but then you can go deeper. And if you learn then the deeper bits, you get to say, but it's energy, that could be the problem in the way that I'm taking necessary action. Or it's the rhythm. It's the rhythm bit, isn't it? Because in that book, it's the rhythm part. Or it's not any of those things. I've skipped understand. I don't understand the situation well enough. I just keep going into action.
And also, there's a lot of discernment in the kind of middle bit as well around the understand. It's kind of because there's all sorts of factors at play. Always the key is to identify the ones that matter and the ones that are most influential and the action that will have the best impact and so on. So it's simple and sophisticated at the same time.
Which is cool, right? I mean, you have a sophisticated audience. You're sophisticated. So the term fractal, the shape of a leaf, is also reflected in the shape of the tree and so on, that something is kind of scale-free. I would suggest that this run loop is fractal-like. It does scale. I'm not claiming some absolutely universal law, but it just keeps popping up and you can get better and better at using it. And then its flexibility, if you like, it becomes the WD-40, the Swiss Army knife, the first aid kit, the torch on your phone, something that you can use as part of your everyday pack. And you say, well, I've already got this. Anything could happen to me. I could be in a car crash. My job could go wrong. Anything could happen at all. And I get to call on this and say, well, I'm a bit better at using it than last time. How do I dance my way out of this? And it's a relief, really, to have so many patterns that are proven at hand.
And to see it again and again. And, the book, Max, is full of case studies where you apply the loop to successful people who have overcome a problem or a challenge in their life. But tell us a bit about, because you've been trying this out. So you told me this is an advanced copy. You've been trying this out with people. You've been having workshops and classes with people. How are they responding and how are they putting it into practice?
Well, fortunately, because the run loop, the very initial origins of the run loop is decades old. The term is somewhere in there in my previous book, Adaptability, at a kind of baby level, but it's in there. I've been able to develop and work on that with clients and myself in my life from that point. So fortunately, not only, I never thought I'd get here, that I had something that had been road tested and stress tested for decades, but that is the case. So what I was able to see is that let's think about some maladaptive responses to life, to being overwhelmed. There's doom scrolling, quiet quitting, fail watching, all these kind of responses that we have, working too hard, hustle culture, or busy boasting, or all these terms for things that are maladaptive. As I see those, even in an organization, they get paralyzed by the projects that they have to do. They get bum rushed. It's kind of weaponization of urgency. Your audience will recognize this. Somebody tells you it's urgent. I hesitate to mention some of these things, but political instability, near chaos, really. Not only might you not like what's happening, but you don't know what's happening from day to day, which is very difficult to do any kind of planning for. We're shifting from all the way really to a near random environment. Then you've got climate change, of course, weighing you down. You have the repercussions of climate change, demographics, and then AI stuffed on top of that. And I've thought a lot about some of those and how the mark of a con sometimes is urgency, the weaponization of urgency. Somebody calls you up and it's a fraudulent call or a fraudulent text. It says, hey, Dad, I don't have any money and I've lost my phone. Could you send me some money? That kind of thing. And you need to do it straight away. Same with blackmail, sextortion or something. The same thing, pressure, but also the salesperson that's trying to get you to do something. Well, why is that? Because if they can stop you having space to think, you will do something because you think you're going to either miss out, FOMO, or because you think something's going to happen to you. You've got to dodge a bullet. And this weaponization of urgency, it has another evil twin. And I think that's the self-weaponization of urgency. To say to yourself, it's almost like the gun to your own head type of stuff. You're doing damage to yourself by saying it must be this way. Your audience will remember 24, the television series. Two things always bothered me about that series, entertaining though it was. One was that the hero would always say, I had no choice. In response to anything he had done in the previous few minutes, I had no choice. There was no other way. And the second was, of course, that the type of thing that he would go on to do was both counterproductive and truly awful, usually involving torture, as I recall. This closing down of the human capacity to think and to remember before acting is very detrimental and leads us to places where we did have choice and have forgotten. So again, I could kind of sketch out it, if I may, the run loop, where, if you can imagine, it's moving along in whatever direction, and then it doubles back on itself. It returns. It goes back on itself. That's the loop. And then it goes, hopefully, if you are doing it effectively, upwards to transcend some limit, to get yourself out of some trap, ideally. I've termed that the recursive space. You go back on yourself to remember and to give yourself sufficient space to say, Jen is a friend, I don't need to stress about this. This is a good place, this is a safe place. Or, actually, you've got this, Max. I don't just mean for this, but you've got this. You've done this before. So when I've discovered that people in the book who are in much worse situations than I've had, without minimizing challenges I've had in my own life, but they fell from 17,000 feet and found themselves in a jungle alone without their reading glasses, with fractures and injuries, having to get out of a jungle, or they found themselves being attacked by the government and having to survive and having relatives die. Lots of people in lots of tough situations who nevertheless found somehow a recursive space to creatively and intelligently model the situation that they're in. What's happening here, really? What's my understanding? Find a mechanism that is keeping me at this current level, and then modify that mechanism. So model, mechanism, modify. That's underneath that understand. And I can't explain it all now, but what's really powerful is that you've only got 3 steps: recognize, understand, necessary action. And underneath that, once you start embedding it into yourself, you can call on it when you need sophistication or you need simplicity. So yes, I've seen clients and myself really say, I thought this is what was happening. I thought we were having a friendly coffee, my partner and I thought that's what we were having. But turns out that I was hogging the conversation and I didn't understand this. And when she was going quiet, I thought she was being unfriendly. But when I started to actually look at how many minutes we were having this conversation for, I realized there's a section in the book called Whose Turn Is It Anyway? About chess clocks. And I started to use a chess clock on my phone to see how much of the conversation I was taking up. And I'm aware I'm doing that here, but I guess I meant to.
This podcast is brought to you by the best-selling How to Be A range of books. These books, authored by me, Jennifer Geary, in collaboration with other seasoned experts, break down roles such as the COO, Chief Risk Officer, Chief People Officer, and Chief Sustainability Officer into their component parts. They explain the technical capabilities you need, but also how to operate at this level, preparing yourself, getting to know your peers, engaging with culture, strategy, building your team, and much more. Over 30,000 books have been sold, and the books have received overwhelmingly positive reviews. There's even a book about the role of AI called The Augmented COO. Check out the books, available on Amazon and Waterstones now. some of the stories are truly humbling of, as you say, someone who fell out of a plane. The one thing I can hear is running water. I don't know where I am, but usually rivers lead to towns. I'll follow the river, and against, insurmountable odds, identified the one action that would save their lives. And in a work context, I think humans are comforted by a busy loop. It's like, oh, it's this again. We've got to get the presentation done by close of play today or else, and then happily run off and do the thing and never actually stop and go like, is anyone going to read the thing anyway? Like, what are we actually trying to do here? And so it kind of, once you see it and once you think about it, it kind of doesn't really allow you to just accept some of those loops. Like, you have to challenge yourself and ask why you're doing something.
I think so, and it can free you. So this is a book about strategy that is not about strategy. This is a book about innovation, but not about innovation. So it's about how humans transcend those limits, how they escape traps, above it, below it, above it, below it. That means that it's all of those things and more. And so, as you say, you get to a meeting, you're in prototype hell, you're in project paralysis, you're doing these things, and nobody pauses to say, are we at all sure that we're doing the right thing? I remember a pharmaceuticals company I worked for started to pay people who were the project directors to tell them when they thought the project was doomed, because it was a 7-year project. And it was far better to pay the person for admitting that this was not going to work than to have somebody just keep on going. It's not the only way, or people, you know them, they're so busy that they call on a meeting, they have a workshop, it's for their senior leadership team, they've paid a lot of money, I cost a lot of money, so they're paying a lot of money. And then what they do is somebody at the end, just when everything's really starting to go and people are engaged in their ideas and you're making progress, somebody will say, can we just follow the agenda? I used to have a sophisticated interactive method with a large audience. If I had sort of 600 people there, and they could vote, so that I would just say to them, we're meant to stop now for lunch. What do you think? Should we or shouldn't we? And they would then vote to continue. And then you made real progress. So I think there's a lot of things where the action is not leading to the outcome that you wish. And it would be far better to spend time on really whatever bit is not working. Whatever bit is the problem, if you know what to do and you're certain that you've got the right model and everything else and it's working out terrifically well, but you don't have the energy to continue, well, then you've got, I think, an energy problem. And you're going to have to find out energy, resources, motivation in order to get there. And what we'll probably get to is that once you start thinking in terms of this one loop, you find that it has 3 predictable ways that it fails. And you're able to identify which one it is and then reboot the loop. So you got, recognize. If somebody was looking at me, I used to do my finger to recognize, and then my next finger to understand, and then my thumb to kind of complete the necessary action. That's what you want. But if that's not working out, the way that you're behaving, the way that you're acting is not working, you then look at it again and you say, is this a hyper failure? Is it too much, too fast, too soon? Is that the problem? Or is it a hypo? Is it too little, too late, too slow? Or is it anti? It's not about timing at all. I'm just completely going in the wrong direction here. And in the book, as you'll discover, in every chapter, in every section, it has the same structure, but it's applied and customized to particular situations with real life examples of how that has gone wrong, and then how you apply the same loop as a counter loop to put it right again. So you only have to remember the 2 things really, the loop and how it goes wrong, and then use the loop to put it right again.
I really like that one because it's tapping into a tendency I have. You try something and it doesn't work and you go, well, that didn't work. And you sort of throw your hands in the air and then you go and do something completely different, as opposed to going, no, I did recognize what was going on. I did understand. I'm in the right space with the action, I just did too much, too little, too late, whatever it was, as opposed to throwing out all of that logic and just saying, well, forget it. It just didn't work. I can't do anything about this. So it encourages a kind of a resilience and one of your favorite words, recursiveness, to say, okay, I was in the right space, but I now need to tweak the amount or whatever it is.
Well, we almost have to go. I love that you were able to do that. I love it because I don't like, I know you're not my client, but I don't like readers or clients to just become dependent. I want them to transcend based on the things that previous humans have done. And this book is very much designed with your mind, everything that we know about your mind in mind. So, for instance, the limited working memory, but also the fact that we learn from other people the best. And so if you have a pattern embodied in the story of somebody that you may even have heard of before, that they may be famous or not, you think you know them, and then you discover that they were applying this pattern in this particular way, you can see through my eyes what I'm seeing. When that comes up again, you can say, oh, yeah, like Robert Pattinson. That's a rhythm thing. I see. This is a slow phase of my project or my career. I'm meant to be ramping up here. Or this is a fast stage. And you remember that was Robert Pattinson, and you remember the movie you saw him in, Twilight or Mickey 17 or whatever. And then you're better able, because we learn from other humans, better able to say, what would Robert do? Or what would Simone Biles do? Or anybody else? So you're able to embed that and not waste what you've done right. It would be a terrible tragedy to waste what you've done right when you only need a tweak.
And so the case studies, they are not just illustrations, actually. They are particular iterations of a loop that you could then call upon and go, oh, this is like one of these ones, and sort of take it down off the shelf and use that one over time.
Yes, and they're the model of, just so anybody listening knows, I went through this multi-decade process of seeing the pattern, working on it, testing it, seeing how it worked elsewhere, but also in selecting these particular people for the book. And there must be 100 or so. And they're not just case studies, as you know. I mean, they are examples, worked examples, where I'm showing, look at this with me, stop. This is what was happening here in Tokyo at the point that Simone Biles stopped. It wasn't just her getting the twisties. It was her using a kind of the Biles weight and waiting deliberately and consciously because she needed to think this thing through. And so by selecting all of these, every single person in the book really represents the whole run loop. So again, it's fractal-like. I don't know, suite with the same word going all the way through it. It's all the way there. So you can look and say, as I point out in the book, not only do they represent the particular idea, but I come back to those people and say, quite apart from that thing I mentioned earlier, they had other problems. And you can see them rebooting this loop in their lives. How could you use this as well? And I found that not only inspirational, but instructive. It's become embedded, more automatic.
Yeah, it's like the more you look, the more you see, I think with some of these. I feel like I understand it now, so I almost don't want to ask you my challenging question, but I did tell you that there would be a challenging question, so let's do it anyway. Could it be said, Max, you let's take Picasso, and you said Picasso was Picasso because he looped. Could someone else say, well, no, Picasso was Picasso because he was really talented with a paintbrush and had a crazy brain and that kind of thing? Answer that question.
Well, at multiple levels. Let's look at it. Something that I said earlier was how science really works. And science is just a description of how humans find things that work repeatedly. Really? That's what it's about. So to some extent, the caveman scientist or cave person scientist saw some fire, then tried to use that fire to do something with it. And then bit by bit, they were able to repeat that. The same with a rock and a flint and drawing in caves, all of these things. It's science, but we didn't call it science. It's this sort of run loop in action. But what we see is that that's a fundamental pattern that I tested first logically. How can it be any way other? I'm not trying to close my mind here like the murder detective who decides that that person's guilty because I say so. No, I'm open to the challenge. But first of all, just even logically, recognize, understand, necessary action. It can't be any shorter because you'd miss some essential step. You'd skip from, you'd just be like a frightened rabbit instead of a conscious human. You'd go from recognize, and then necessary action, instinct. And you can't just recognize, understand forever because you'd just be sat there starving round the fire if you discovered fire. And you can't just understand action because if you don't recognize, the relevant bit of what's happening. You just understand everything, and that's not helpful either. And you certainly don't want to skip to action. So logically, and it's important people follow this through, logically, test it yourself. How can it be shorter? And if it's any longer, it doesn't add anything, you will find. It is the minimum viable loop. So that's the logic. Now, test that against examples out there to find out, and this is what I was trying to look for. If conscious adaptation, as I argue, has to follow this loop, and it's only when we do it well enough that we transcend some previous limit and escape some kind of trap, whatever that limit is. We couldn't fly, and now we can fly. That's a big limit, a big one. We couldn't cure cancer, and now we can. I mean, we can go into people's blood and actually genetically modify them. Or you could find there was an irreconcilable difference in your relationship, but actually you found one, so it was reconcilable. So we can do that. If that's the case, what I then wanted to look at was skewed positive deliberately, people who had transcended. So they'd done something super adaptive. They'd leapt above a particularly challenging line and to discover how the super adaptive mind thought. We all are. We've got super adaptive minds. And I'll come back to it. They're metaplastic, which really you need to remind me to come back to. I then thought some people must be born super adaptive. Some appear to achieve it, and some have it thrust upon them by circumstance. They never thought that it was possible. My mother was fond of sharing stories of people who had suddenly gained superhuman strength. You know, the mother that rips off the car door, and it really appears to be a proper phenomenon. They can. Actually, she did, not the car door. But I remember we had a leak at a home. Somebody had hit sort of a nail through a pipe. And I remember her just suddenly ripping off the floorboard with this immense strength. So if we say that there's a line, that's the transcendent line, the person that's born to it almost seems from birth to sort of loop ahead of it. And that's what I mean by a Picasso or a Montessori or many other people. As if from birth, they were aware that they could improve their ability to think, and they could improve, their world was malleable, that they could alter it. And that was in them.
We know and recognize some of those people, you know, the ones that are old before their years, the ones who just seem to get it day one. If someone like a Chapel Rowan or even a Taylor Swift at 14 was breaking the system, was just like, I can see how this is working and I can see a better way.
It's remarkable. They look and they go, no, this is not fixed. I am not staying in. Montessori, one of my favourite lines about her was when she was a child at school, whatever, primary school, she used to be very kind to her fellow students, but she used to say from time to time when she was amazed at what they didn't know yet, she would say, "You're not even born yet." And if you think about her whole career then, she was aware then as a child that there were levels of birth and rebirth. And I'm not even talking about sort of metaphysical stuff, just even factual stuff. There were layers and you could be born and reborn at higher levels. And that is indeed what she helped, I think, millions of children to do. And many millions who have never heard of her have been helped by her kind of teaching methods in schools that recognized what she used to call the absorbent brain. And I would call the metaplastic brain. So these people, the Picasso signing his paintings with the king, and Montessori, I mean, what's that? Saying as a child, I don't want to go anymore to art school because they're teaching me the wrong things, you know? I am the king. This is remarkable. But if you're not that person, and maybe we all are a bit, but if you're not fully that person, then you can learn far more from people who have achieved it over time, or have had it thrust upon them by circumstance. And that's what I was really looking for, people who had done that. I illustrate it only with 100 or so examples, but I tested it on many thousands of more to see whether these patterns held, so that you could become a pattern detective, you could become a plastic person, you could choose which loop you used, rather than the reinforcing one that just goes round and round. You know, the habit one? Reinforce, reinforce, reinforce. The same one that Facebook uses to keep you clicking, the reinforcing loop, or the minimalist loop, giving up everything only for one limited view, or the messy trap loop where nothing you do seems to lead anywhere. And instead have a recursive loop, as you mentioned earlier, where it doesn't just go round in a circle and meet in the same place. It moves along, then it loops back on itself, and then it lands you in a different place, preferably a little bit better each time, preferably because you're doing this consciously physically in a better place, but also in your head in a better place, because your brain is actually rewired to do this better next time. And this is the bonus, you know what you just did to your brain. Unlike all the stuff you lose all the time around the place, and you go, why did I buy that? I've done nothing with it. But this is in your brain. And so for those, this is a blend of these two amazing features of any super-adaptive brain, including yours, mine, anybody listening. Your brain is plastic. That means it fires and rewires, that kind of Hebbian idea. But also you have metacognition. You can think about your own thoughts, which can be alarming sometimes, but also awesome. You step outside of yourself to listen to myself, me, myself, and I. Combine these two, brilliant. I mean, some people must have, 100,000 years ago, whatever, they had insight into their own brains that allowed them to improve themselves without the labels or the degrees or the scans. William James, only 200 years or so ago, that kind of era, he had that insight. Freud and many, many others, Frieda the artist, they had an insight. Metaplasticity is when you rewire your brain deliberately and think about how that's working. I tend to do this when, oh no, I'm going to rewire that little bit because this isn't working for me. I need to understand that a bit better. I mean, pow.
And the reason you don't like 24 and the guy saying, I had no choice, is because that's what we think when we're in a spinning loop that never evolves. It's like, well, this is my necessary reaction, as opposed to, hang on a minute, that hasn't worked. You know, the definition of insanity, banging your head against, doing the same thing, expecting a different action. Instead, teaching us to step back and to analyze and to think again.
Yeah, upgrading your upgrade. So as you work through this book, it's designed to embed itself in your head. I think one of the first pages says you already loop. This is not the beginning. This is the beginning, but not the beginning. You already loop before I talk to you. And if you think for a moment about your own thoughts, you already knew that was true. So test it against your own experience. And if I'm right that you already loop and that your world is made up of other people's loops, wouldn't it make sense to get better at it? And then spend the rest of your life kind of living the loop, learning the loop, and ultimately, Chapter 10, leading the loop, providing environments in which other people can transcend their current limits. And that's the superhuman, kind of super sapient aspect, I think, to us, when we reach back and we say, how can I teach you this thing that I've learned? And how can I create an environment in which you are raised up? I'm not punching down. I'm not keeping you down. I'm not keeping you trapped. I'm not keeping it to myself. I'm sharing this. I mean, that's in every religion and every non-religion, every best way of living. Involves, I think, both this loop, because it has to, but also this intent to raise people up, which is where you get to in the book, and then you loop again.
And make us better than we are, and evolve and evolve. Recurro, ergo vivo.
Oh, yeah. I'll send you a T-shirt.
Max, I always love our conversations, and I always come away buzzing, and there's like a first ingestion of it, and then I think about it again and again afterwards. I always love having you on the podcast. The book is out now?
It is out now. It's available in all good bookshops. So, yeah, it is available. A perfect Christmas present, I think.
Oh, listen, it would just, fit perfectly in a large stocking. Super-Adaptability, How to Transcend in an Age of Overwhelm. Dr. Max McKeown, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure as always. Thank you, Jenny.
We hope you enjoyed the podcast. For more information about the How to Be a books, the C-Suite Framework courses, the podcast, or to get in touch with me, head over to www.csuiteframework.com.